Arles is an artist's dream. It is a really amazing place. It's where you go to visit in France for that. Obviously Paris, but yeah, Arles has such an amazing reputation. It's meant to be absolutely beautiful, beautiful place.
Is it the quintessential like French town village stuff around that area that people think in their mind or see on social media? Is it that sort of vibe down there where you are?
Yeah, that is exactly what it's like. That is what I live in. I know it sounds so cheesy, but that is literally what it's like.
Is your podcast English or French or both?
It's English. I don't do any in French. It really is for English speakers who are either thinking of making the move or who are already here.
Welcome to the Winging It Travel podcast with me, James Hammond. Every Monday, I'll be joined by guests to talk about their travel stories, travel tips, backpacking advice, and so much more. Right now, I'm taking the podcast on the road travelling with me. So tune in every week for short-form episodes detailing all my travels alongside my Monday guest episode. Are you a backpacker, gap year student, or simply someone who loves to travel? Then this is the podcast for you, designed to inspire you to travel. There'll be stories to tell, tips to share, and experiences to inspire. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode where I'm joined by Judith Keys from the My Best Friend in France podcast. Judith's podcast centers around people moving to France from other countries and offers advice on how to adapt. And Judith is from Northern Ireland and has been to France many years with her family. Today we're going to talk about France, adapting to life in a new country, the pros and cons of that, her podcast and other travels. Judith, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, James. I'm good, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Tell the listeners, where are you right now?
I am in Provence in southeast France. So yeah, it's cold but sunny outside and yeah, beautiful.
Wow. Let's talk about where you're from originally, and maybe you can tell listeners, where was the interest in France?
So I am originally from Belfast in Northern Ireland, as you might hear from my accent. And yeah, my dad was a French teacher, so every year he had an assistant or an assistante to come. So someone who was teacher training in France would come to my dad's school. And we always got to know them every year. And most years we would come to France on holiday. Like my dad was obsessed with France. So that carried on really to my sister and I. And yeah, we used to visit these assistants nearly every time we came on holiday. And then my dad fell in love with a particular place here in the south of France where this one assistant came from. And that was really the start of the story of why we ended up in this tiny little village in the middle of nowhere.
And growing up, I don't know if this is a fair question, Northern Ireland, obviously we know from the British side, the Troubles and stuff. Was that a difficult time growing up with all that stuff? And was there always a thought that maybe you want to go away somewhere else?
It wasn't really the Troubles that made me want to get away, because that's sort of all the Good Friday Agreement happened when I was, I think 16 or 17.
Yeah.
So everything was much better by the time I was sort of finished school and heading to uni and everything. But I think it's more, Northern Ireland is a tiny place. It can feel quite suffocating. And I think lots of people love that about it and stay and never leave that. And lots of people want to go. So I think for your listeners, the travel podcast, like I just wanted to get out and get away and break free of somewhere that I felt was very sort of closed-minded and small and everybody knew everybody, and I couldn't wait to get away. So I moved to Scotland to study. I went to uni in Edinburgh. So that was the start really of getting away from it. But yeah, I mean, the Troubles were difficult, although I think when you live in a place and it's happening around you, you just sort of get on with it. I know that sounds weird, but now when I look at it, I think, my God, I lived in the middle of like bombs going off. That's crazy when I think of it now, but it just sort of just happened. I never really felt scared or, it's bonkers, isn't it? I think it was more scary when my dad was my age, my dad in his 20s when it really started up. I think it was in the 70s, it was much worse. But at the time I was a teenager and things, it had calmed down.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was growing up, so we are roughly same age. I'm a little bit younger, but I used to get a little bit scared of the news, right? I used to see this little psychologist when I was in like primary school because I was kind of scared of two things, right? One was I was scared of plugs. You plug your electric thing into the wall. So sockets, I had a weird thing about that. And then number two, I kept reading the news, and obviously at the time there was like bombs going off in London, right? Or around UK by the IRA. I was like, oh shit, they're going to come to Norwich. I'm going to get caught up in a bomb. I'm gonna die. It's crazy how
Oh
I was
no,
thinking like that.
James.
Even though like that's so far away, and they're never going to target Norwich really. But yeah. So that's kind of my memory from it.
No, it's not. So that's awful. Think of you. Yeah, I know. Whereas I have this really clear memory of my friend Kerry and I leaving school one day, and our school was right in the centre of Belfast, and there was a bomb scare, and we got told like there was no buses. In fact, we didn't get told. All the buses were off.
Mm,
We didn't know how we were going to get home. Nobody really told us anything. We just heard, oh yeah, the buses are off because there's a bomb scare. And we basically ran the whole way home, but laughing and like just thinking this was hilarious and a bit scary, but oh, isn't this crazy? And I remember, like, we ran the whole way home and just sort of screaming and laughing. And, I think about it and I think that is it's just absolutely crazy. I would never want my kids now to
no.
go through something like that. But yeah. And of course, it turned out to be nothing, which it nearly always did. It turned out to be nothing, and we were perfectly safe. But yeah,
Oh,
it's funny how I don't have any. I mean, maybe I do have some severe psychological problems based on that, but none that I think I'm okay.
wow. Okay. And then amongst all of this, was there any travel? And maybe I know you mentioned France was a big thing for your dad, but was there any other travel growing up that maybe ignited a bit of an idea to maybe go and see some other countries or other cultures?
There was just always this thing of going away on holiday, yeah, getting away from home. It wasn't necessarily to anywhere particularly far flung. My
Mm,
parents weren't interested in going far away from Ireland, but definitely France. I mean, my dad just he had been to Paris, I think, when he was 17. He went there on a sort of work experience thing, which again was sort of he was on his own, just in Paris, working in an elderly people's home, I think, and he just fell in love with that. And so he always had this thing of it's okay to leave and it's okay to be somewhere else. He did it and he was fine. So I think he passed that on to us. This sort of, it's better to trust people than not. I think nowadays we've got into this fear thing of, oh, what might happen. But my dad always just said to us, oh, people are generally nice. There'll be someone there to help, you know.
true.
And I think that's what gave us this I mean, no fear at all when I left to go to uni. Obviously, I wasn't going far, but I was still, a boat journey away. At the time, there was no flight between Belfast and Edinburgh.
Oh
And I
wow.
used to have to get the boat across. Yeah, I know. I
Didn't
used to
realize that.
get the sea cat, which I remember not crazy. Yeah. God, I sound so old now. But yeah, I used to have to get the boat and just it didn't really scare me. I just sort of thought, oh, I'll be okay. And there'll be people I can ask or so. I'm probably more scared about stuff now than I was then. Maybe it's just the youth
Oh,
thing, you just
that's
go
getting
for it.
old. Yeah, yeah.
And it's crap.
Tell me about it. It's a nightmare. It's an ongoing nightmare about what could go wrong. It's weird
I
actually.
know.
So it's a valid point that I had this like full circle moment really, like when you're younger. And yeah, the things I was scared of, the plugs, the bombs, whatever that wasn't going off. And then fearlessness. And that's like
Mm.
now like mid to late 30s. Oh shit, like I need to look after myself health wise. Think things can go wrong. It's weird how it comes full circle.
I know. And I think it is because you think much more, you see more stuff happening, you hear, you're probably more inclined to, although I don't watch the news, so I'm saying that, but you hear more, you're more aware of stuff, I think, as you
Mm,
get older. And I think it's with that awareness comes the fear. I think when you're a kid, you don't really, or a young adult, you're not thinking about stuff that could go wrong. You're just thinking of all
no.
the fun stuff that you can do. So
Yeah. And before we get to France, in your university years, did you travel
yeah.
much as an adult?
I did a year abroad, so I studied French and Spanish. So my master's is in languages with interpreting and translating. So I was always into languages, and yeah, I'm wanting to. I think I have something about liking being sort of other.
Mm,
I like being here and not speaking, and being different to people. I don't know what it is. I think again, it's just like getting away and being away from Northern Ireland, where everybody does feel quite similar. I sound like I'm slagging it off. It's a beautiful country. I love going home. I love Ireland. And I love my friends from home and my family. So I try and go as often as I can. But I loved doing languages because it gave me the opportunity to go somewhere else. And I knew I would then have a year abroad. So you could put down like Mexico as a choice
hmm
for going for Spanish. I didn't get to go there, but I got to go 6 months in Brussels and 6 months in Cadix in the south of Spain, or
Yeah.
Cadiz, I think
Yeah.
we say in English,
Mm.
in the south of Spain. So again, yeah, just, I mean, I didn't do much work over the course of that year. I drank quite a lot of beer in Brussels and quite a lot of sangria in the south of Spain. Did very little work, but I had a ball and just loved being there. Although, I mean, it was hard to speak French in Brussels. Everybody spoke me in English. You know, they just heard the
Yeah.
accent and spoke to me in English. So I was there to try and learn French, but it was a brilliant experience. Again, like staying in a flat in a different place and just being elsewhere, being away and trying something new. I loved it.
Another cheeky question before we get to France about languages. In your
Mm.
opinion, can you only learn a language, in your opinion, like somewhere where they actually speak it all the time to actually really grasp the nuances, the actual stuff?
In my opinion, you have to. Yeah. You have to. And only from my experience, for sure. I mean, definitely classes can help. And I loved my degree. You know, I love languages. I loved learning all the nuances that I could. But it wasn't until I was here and immersed in it and forced to speak that it came on leaps and bounds. I mean, I speak completely fluently now. I mean, everybody knows I'm not from here because I have an accent, which I don't hear. I think I sound brilliant when I speak French, but apparently I have an accent. So everybody knows, yeah, no, everybody knows I'm definitely not from here. And there's loads of words I'm sure I don't know, but I can pretty much carry on a conversation with anybody about most things. Day to day stuff, anyway, is absolutely fine. And that is because I live here. I couldn't have done it before. And I think there's a confidence piece that comes with that. You know, at the start, I probably could speak a lot better than I thought, but I was so underconfident. I thought I couldn't talk because I was paralyzed, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to say something wrong. I'm going to make a dick of myself. You know, people are going to laugh and think, oh, you know, and it was just this embarrassment. I think I just couldn't put myself out there. And there's other people here that I'll see, you know, other English speakers who live here who will just make so many mistakes, but I admire them so much because they chat away and they don't care and they're laughing and joking and just think, good on you. I wish I could have been like that sooner, but yeah, it took me a bit longer, but I got there in the end.
Yeah, me and my friend had the same thing in Spain when we walked last year or year before, where I would say he would probably know more Spanish than me, but I do have a bit more confidence to go and try it. So like we're in a situation like, oh, who's going to ask the question? And I'm like, oh, Craig, like you probably know more words than me, but he's a bit like, oh, you give it a go. It's okay, I'll give it a go, but I will make more mistakes. But I think what I kept in my mind is it's not the fear of saying the sentence I'm going to say, it's the fear of the response and not knowing what they're saying. So in my mind, saying something's fine, but I'm like, right, can I pick up a word in their response that I might know what they're talking about in response to my question? That's the challenge I find. But you do get better at it. I think it is a process, and it's quite an exciting process.
Yeah, it's like learning a musical instrument or something. It's
Mm.
like getting your ear in, you know, you need to be
Yeah,
doing it over and over again all the time. And then, like you say, it becomes easier as time goes on because you're just hearing it all the time. That's why I think classes can work really, really well for the basics. And for grammar, I mean, I'm a grammar geek, so I love getting all that correct and I love
yeah.
learning all the different conjugations and did Latin at school. So, you know, I'm like, I love it all. So I would definitely say do that, do classes as well for sure, because that will really help and it'll help build up the basics to then give you confidence maybe to speak. I mean, I didn't really, I suppose I did my master's, but once I moved here, I didn't do any classes or anything. I just, you know, and I could have done that. But yeah, I think immersion is the way to go. If you want to learn a language, just jump in.
And how's your Spanish?
Oh, it's woeful now, James. Woeful. I can't speak it at all. I had a friend of mine asked me to do them a favor because they don't speak Spanish at all, and my friend Michelle moved to Valencia in January 2020, and she asked me a few months before if I could ring up some rental agencies to help find a flat. And I was like, yeah, yeah, no probs. And literally, just French just kept coming out. I just kept speaking French. I couldn't speak Spanish. It was the weirdest thing. I thought, oh, yeah, I'll be okay. I'll be able to get by. I understood everything the people were saying, but I couldn't speak. I was so embarrassed. I was like, right, I'll just send you an email.
Google Translate.
So, yeah, my Spanish is terrible. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's get to France. You mentioned your interest there and how it was sort of there from early days. What was the process of moving there full time? Now, obviously, pre-Brexit, it's pretty easy, right? You just go there and work and live. So I assume you got there just in the old days when it's glorious, where you can just go anywhere live and work, and it was easy as that. So is that what you did, and where did you go first?
Yeah, so I was lucky because I worked in this big law firm in Edinburgh, and my boss was about to go off on mat leave. She was pregnant, and I worked really closely with her. I mean, I worked with the whole team, but I worked closely with her, and she was about to go off for 6 months, and I thought, "Oh, I'm going to be twiddling my thumbs for 6 months. I'm going to ask if I can take 6 months off too." So I just thought, I'm going to try. I'm going to
Mhm.
ask, see what they say, and I can go to France for 6 months and try. And they said yes. They let me go. They let me go to France with under the premise that I was coming back and everything. I was like, when I did, I mean, I knew I was going to go back. I really wanted to try it out. And my
Mhm.
parents, they had already taken early retirement here. My sister had already moved here, to, as I say, this little village in the middle of nowhere that we'd been to when we were on holiday. So they'd already all moved. So I was really the last one. And I think I missed out on a lot of stuff when I lived in Edinburgh. They were all here. It was about
Mm.
maybe 10 years that I lived in Edinburgh, and my sister was having her babies and family get-togethers were happening, and I was far away. So I just thought, well, I'll do this 6 months and I'll see how I get on. And I loved it, James. I really loved it. I did. It was easy-ish for me because, well, much, much easier. In fact, not easy-ish, because I had a buffer. I had a place to come and stay.
Yeah.
It was only for 6 months. I had
Mm.
a bit of money put aside. So it wasn't this sort of it was a bit of an off the cuff choice, but it wasn't a difficult one because, yeah, I had everything set up and I knew it was only for a short space of time. So that was a really amazing thing, an amazing opportunity, I think, and something that opened my eyes to possibilities. It made me realize that I didn't have to be at my desk. And, I'd done, I think, 8 years in that law firm and I was really not enjoying it. Um, I'd gone as far as I could as well. I was in a
Yeah.
management position, but basically, unless you're a lawyer in a law firm, you can't move up.
Of
You reach a
course.
certain point and you
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
move.
Mhm.
Lawyers go right up partner or whatever. But I was never gonna go anywhere more than that. So I saw my future ahead of me, and I'd bought a house and everything. I'd just bought a
Oh.
house in Edinburgh, and I was like, right, I'm doing all the right things. This is what you need to do. And then I moved to France. I think that I got the sort of commitment fear that, oh my God, this is my life now. This is
Mm.
it. I'm just going to be doing 9 to 5 in this house in suburbia. And I didn't want to do it. So yeah, so I did this 6 months and then I went back to work, went back to Edinburgh, went back to my desk job, and everything looked completely different. I just thought, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
This is not for me. I've had my time and I'd seen what it looked like, and the grass was definitely greener. So I did a couple of months and then I think it was April 2013, I handed my notice in. Yeah, and moved here in May
Oh wow.
2013. So no, I must have handed my notice in earlier than that. 3 months, I think I had to give. And then yeah, I moved here permanently in May 2013.
Wow. So my question from that is, how do you deal with the house admin? Because I guess you've got to sell it, right? Or did you rent it
I had
out?
to sell my house. I had to sell my house. I had to do all this sort of going back and forth between Edinburgh and France. And once again, I think I was really lucky. The people who lived next door to me, I lived in a block of flats, which is really common in Edinburgh. And the people who lived on the same stair as me and the same floor, they wanted to buy to rent.
Oh,
So basically, my lovely neighbours bought my flat and then
oh,
rented it out.
easy. Mm.
I know, it was amazing.
Dream.
So yeah, I was really, really lucky. They were amazing, lovely people, and that was that done. And then yeah, I mean, obviously it involved back and forth. I had to get movers, I had to get all my stuff over. I managed to get my amazing, beautiful grandmother's piano that lived in my flat in Edinburgh all the way over. It had already come from Belfast to Edinburgh, and I managed to get the piano from Edinburgh all the way down to the south of France. Yeah, so I mean, it was a bit of a labor of love, but I did it, and it wasn't, it was only one person's stuff. It wasn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't, and it was easy enough. But yeah, it's so funny thinking back to that time. I'd also met a nice Frenchman in those 6 months, so that made the
Ah,
whole
okay.
move have an extra sweetness to it because I didn't move because of him. And always really want to say that because everybody's like, oh yeah, that's why you moved. And it's not, but it was just a lovely extra, and Pierre is now my husband, so
Okay. Yeah.
that was just lovely. Yeah. So I think I've made the right choice. You did the right thing.
So my next question would be then, it's interesting here because you had the 6 months, bit of a buffer because your family are here, France. You go back, you sell your stuff, you move back permanently. There must be a different thinking now because you've not got that in your mind that you're going back to Edinburgh. This is it. You're now here permanently. So was there any sort of tough times in that first year or so about trying to adapt to French life? Like, where did you move to? How did you get a job? How was your French? Like, how did it all play into the first stint of you being there permanently?
Yeah, it was a struggle the first year. I mean, I'm saying it was a struggle. There was lots of lovely stuff because obviously it was Pierre. Pierre and I were together.
Yeah.
I'd moved there. We were all, it was just the beginning for us. But yeah, I had to live with my parents for the first couple of months again, and that was really tough. I was in my 30s. It was not pleasant. I don't want to live with my parents. I wanted to get away, get
Yeah.
out. So I had to get a job and I had to have enough money to be able to go somewhere else ASAP. So I did whatever I could to begin with. I did some holiday home cleaning, and management, that type of thing, whatever I could find. And I was lucky in a way because I had family here. They had connections and they knew people. So, uh, you know, those people were like, oh, Judith's here. Can she help us do this
Mm.
or that? Or whatever. So I did loads of little things when I first came, just whatever I could to make ends meet. And Pierre very quickly handed in his notice. He lived in Marseille. So he quite quickly left his job and we moved in together. So we found a place in this little village here. And it's so funny, James, because it's the house that we used to stay in when we came here when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
When I was 5 years old, I remember staying in that house and I was living at mum and dad's thinking, oh God, I'm never going to find anywhere because it's really expensive here. It's Provence to rent or to buy. It's
Mm.
extortionate. I thought I'm never going to find anywhere. And one day I was just walking along and looked, and in the window of that house, just in the corner of the window, was a little tiny post-it note, just saying, for rent, I can't remember, €600 a month or something.
Yeah.
Inquire here. And I thought, oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm going to phone immediately and phone Pierre and said, right, will I do this? And he's like, yep, go for it. And we got it and moved in there. And yeah, it was just an absolute dream. I was really, really lucky, James, I think.
Mm.
But the language barrier, yeah, you talked about the language barrier there. It was huge for me in the beginning. Again, just through lack of confidence. We were trying to work. I ended up, doing a lot of holiday home stuff. So it was good because I was speaking English. Most of the holiday home owners were English speakers. The people who were coming to stay in those holiday homes were English speakers. So that was a sort of easy job. I remember going for a job interview at a tourist office and thinking, oh, it's just a little tourist office in the middle of nowhere here. I'm sure it'll be easy. There'll be like a couple of people maybe.
Yeah.
And I walked into the interview and there was 4 people in suits, like 2
Oh,
guys, 2
God.
women, all really serious,
Yeah.
and the whole thing was in French. And I fluffed it so much just because I was so underconfident and I couldn't speak properly, I couldn't explain myself, and I underestimated all of that, I think. So there was an element of luck with some of the work, but yeah, that I found that hard going for interview and stuff. And yeah. I would be fine now. I sometimes think I'd quite like to go and work in the tourist office. It might be a nice little number,
Mm.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be pretty cool, I think. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I always think about that.
Yeah, it'd be lovely because I, can speak both languages, obviously, and I know the area well now. But anyway, yeah, I'm much more of an entrepreneur, so I don't think I could go and be in a job anymore anyway.
I don't think I've asked actually the little area that you're in. Where is it in France? And can you explain where it is? Like in terms of maybe
Yeah,
somewhere that people might know.
yeah. So I am near Avignon. So a lot of people know Avignon, sur le pont d'Avignon. It's like southeast. Marseille and Lyon are my closest big cities. So
Yeah.
we are sort of slap bang in the middle of those two. So if you look at Lyon and Marseille on the map, sort of find the middle point and we're around there. Nyons is my local town. It's Nyons, and
Okay.
for some weird reason, it's an anomaly, and you say the S on the end. Normally, you don't in French, so it's
Oh,
Nyons. Yeah,
Lyon.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and it's well known for its olive oil. It's the olive capital of France. So if you ever
Dream.
have olive oil or olives from Nios, they are the best. They're absolutely beautiful. And they have like a protected status.
Yeah.
It's wine country, so we're really close to Côte du Rhône wine. There are like fruit orchards all around,
Oh,
that type of thing. Yeah, I mean, it is that sort of idyllic picture you can imagine of Provence. That is sort of what I live in. Yeah,
oh,
like the old stone houses, sunflower fields, that lavender, yeah, all that stuff.
oh.
That
got a question, right? I saw on social media yesterday or the day before, someone's like, you got to go to this place in France. It's never really talked about. It's amazing. And it's right near you.
Ooh, where is it?
Arles? Or Arles?
Arles. Oh, Arles. Arles.
Arles.
Arles. Yeah,
Yeah, I saw
Arles.
pictures like, oh my God, I need to go there. What is that like?
Arles is an artist's dream. It
Yeah.
is a really like amazing place. So my cousin Kate, she works, I want to say she's a curator, and she used to work in an art museum in Boston. She's recently moved to London and does a lot of social media content for a couple of art agencies.
Hmm.
And that is she did art history at college, and it was just her thing. And she came to visit Arles this summer because it's where you go. It's where you go to visit in France for that. Obviously Paris, but yeah, Arles has such an amazing reputation.
Man, I couldn't believe what I was
It's meant to
seeing.
be absolutely beautiful, beautiful place. I've never been, so
Oh,
I can't believe I've never
no.
been. It's so close. I've never been. I know it's terrible because they were like, yeah, it was so funny because we were meant to be going to see them. Her and her partner came. And I was like, yeah, amazing. I can't wait to come and see you now. Definitely. It's going to be so fun. I've never been. And then it came around so quickly. And she was like, oh, yeah, we're arriving tomorrow, by the way. And it was just, yeah. So they ended up coming to visit us here as well. But it was a missed opportunity. So I'm going to have to go visit Arles.
Oh no, because someone else in the podcast that I've had on, Avignon was one of their favorite places ever. So I'm like, oh right, so I've got this triangle now of where you are, like sort of near Avignon and Arles. I'm like, oh my God, I need to somehow
And
go and visit.
Marseille, James, you have to
Oh,
go to
I've been,
Marseille.
yeah, I've been to
Oh,
Marseille. Yeah,
we've talked about this before. I love Marseille. It has sometimes a bit of a rough and ready reputation,
yeah,
but it has some of the best people in the world. It's so cool. It's, gritty, but in the best possible way, I think. It's just really fun, or cool vibe. Amazing restaurants, great food. Yeah, there's stuff you have to watch out for, but I think that's like any big city.
yeah. My only problem with Marseille is I went there during the football Euros, and my experience there wasn't the best.
Oh
With
no.
yeah, there was a bit of violence there, wasn't there? So didn't
Oh no.
yeah, because we went to the England Russia game, which was chaos before and after. I don't know how we missed it all really, but it wasn't very nice. So I think I need to go
Oh no.
back in normal times to make sure I get another view of it because I love the south of France.
Well, add that to your list.
Yeah, because we went to Monaco, so we went to Nice, and then that whole I probably would love to do Nice all the way around to where you are. I think maybe finish in Montpellier, that sort of like south
Mm.
corner would be pretty awesome. Go check out.
Montpellier's class as well.
Is it?
Montpellier's a really student town, a really student city, and you can just walk it. It's quite a big city, but you can just walk all day. There's loads of really cool places to visit in
Mm,
Montpellier. And Avignon, yeah, I would say it's probably one of my top favorite places in the world as well. Like your other guess, it's absolutely beautiful. It's small enough just to really, it's just so full of history. It's an old walled city.
mhm.
Um, there's like an amazing covered food market, Leal and Avignon, which I love. Oh my goodness, yeah, definitely. If you're there, you definitely have to visit Avignon. It's beautiful.
Just a couple of things from me. Please head to my new website, www.wingingittravelpodcast.com. The link is in the show notes. And secondly, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I'm really enjoying showing you my content I have from the last year or so. Thank you.
Is it the quintessential like French town village stuff around that area that people think in their minds or see on social media? Is it that sort of vibe down there where you are?
Yeah, that is exactly what it's like. That is what I live in. I know it sounds so cheesy, but that is literally what it's like. The only thing I would say, and I want to be, the only thing that I was really shocked by when I moved here, because even when I was here all those years on holiday, you see this sleepy little village and everything looks so beautiful and the weather's gorgeous, and you do have a completely different way of life. I think it's much less fast paced.
Mm,
It is that sleepy, go for a siesta in the afternoon, and big lunches and all that stuff is true. But there's an undercurrent of, small village life that I didn't know until I moved here. That thing of the thing I wanted to get away from in Northern Ireland is basically what I've moved right into. Everybody knows everybody. You can't do anything without somebody saying oh, I saw you were here, or I saw you did that, or,
Right.
so that was difficult for me when I first came because I've been used to the anonymity of living in a big city like Edinburgh for a long time. And whilst
Mm.
that's not brilliant either, I love the community vibe here. Um, I do miss the anonymity, and also there's quite an undercurrent of racism. I hate to go a bit heavy, but that really shocked me when I came here. You think it's so beautiful and lovely, but there's quite a large North African community in the south of France, all over France actually, and there's an undercurrent of racism here where I live. It's quite a right wing area,
Okay.
which you wouldn't know
Conservative.
unless you lived here. A lot of farmers who employ North African people to come and work with them, but then, vote for Marine Le Pen. It's really disgusting. And it's
Yeah.
something that I found very, very difficult when I first moved here, but I just try and vote and do whatever I can to
Mm.
get rid. And our little village, which I love about this little village where I am, is one of the most, I mean, the elections, there's some sort of elections coming up. Don't ask me which, I'm terrible at knowing this type of thing, but there's basically recently there's been some posters go up of the different candidates.
Yeah.
And of course, there's Marine Le Pen. Every time her poster goes up in our village, within seconds, somebody has either defaced her or pulled it off or ruined the poster in some way. Or, yeah, I mean, and then the next day there's a new one goes up, and within seconds it's come down again, or somebody's scribbled all over
Yeah.
it. And I think, right, good. We're a little stronghold in the middle of quite a funny area. Yeah, so that was a big shock to me. But yeah, it's just something I wasn't aware of that I thought was interesting. Sleepy little village, but yeah, has issues as well.
Yeah. Like anywhere. I think for people listening, Le Pen is like a right wing politician in France, right? She's getting, unfortunately, a little bit popular in some areas, so it's not good.
It's the same as in lots of places, isn't it? That right
Yeah.
wing sort of,
Populist, right? Yeah, yeah, they love it.
mhm.
And they seem to get a lot of votes. So there's that saying, is that small town or small village, small mindset, whatever that is? It's not all the time true, but
Yeah, I think here it is quite true. There's a lot of rich landowners and farmers here and
sure.
winemakers who've made a lot of money and who don't want to
Yeah.
lose it, and
Yeah.
who, from my point of view, I've always been more left wing. If you've got it, then you must share it out, and help others, give other people a leg up. But
Yeah. Especially
that's
if you're rich
that's the
or got a
way
lot of money.
everybody, yeah. Everybody in our village, thankfully, well, the majority of people here where I am, in my village is only 300 people, but we are very, I want to say, we help each other out loads. If someone
Yeah, that's
has,
great.
I'll give you an example. My neighbor, she's elderly and she broke her ankle a couple of years ago. There was somebody different every day from the village going in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening to walk her dog for her.
Yeah, I love that.
Every day it was different people, and every day it was all organized. It just everybody mucks in and helps each other out. And I love that about where I live. I love it.
What are maybe some of the, I don't know, top 3 tips for someone moving to France if they're an English speaker, for example? What would you say are the top 3 things they've got to do to help them make it easier?
I would say the first one has to be language for sure. I mean, don't let it put you off if you can't speak French, but
Mm.
because some of the bigger cities, you'll probably find people do speak a bit more English, but don't rely on that because in places like Paris, yeah, they won't want to
No,
speak English. They're quite rude. So yeah, I think try your best, but don't let it put you off. If you can't, just come, but try and learn, and throw yourself into it if you can, and try and not be as scared as I was. Number two would be to, I think it's a follow on from number one, and it's to socialize. Or do activities that you love, to try and meet other people. And even if you're an introvert, maybe doing an activity that is a quiet, art type thing or something that you love, or gaming or whatever it might be. Try and find your people and make at
Mm.
least 1 or 2 connections with other English speakers if that's what you need to do. I mean, I had met other English speakers when I came here as well, and that really helps. If you have to at the beginning, do it, and there's no
Sure.
reason not to.
Mm.
I was quite sort of, oh no, I want to get straight into French life and I'm not going to start mixing with just, other English speakers. But you know what? Why not? It really helped me. And 2 of my best friends here now are English speakers
Oh,
that I met when I first came. So,
yeah.
they've been a lifeline for me. So just make connections, I suppose, would be my second
Connections.
thing,
Yeah.
because I think that can also really help when you do come up against admin. That would be my third thing. Don't let the admin put you off. I know a lot of people who've really struggled with it, and it can be difficult. And I know how hard it is since Brexit. I've been so
Oh,
lucky
yeah.
because, as you said, came here in the good old days when you could just
Yeah.
move wherever and do whatever. But don't let it put you off, because I think there's a lot of miscommunications in the different places here, different bodies, and it can feel so frustrating. But most people that I know get there in the end. It's just having patience, and you may have to do your dossier 6 times, or it'll get sent back, and you need to put this other form in that nobody told you about at the start, but now is completely necessary, and it'll drive you mental. But that would be number 3. Just try and be patient if you're coming here for to live. It will happen. You'll get there in the end. It just might be a bit of a long process. Get help if you need to as well. Get help, ask other people. That's why it's good, I think, to have other English speakers who've done the same thing as you, because they'll maybe have some experience. They'll know where to go and join some of the big Facebook groups maybe. There's lots of resources to find help. Lots of the big government websites have versions in English as well. So
okay. And is the work-life balance better, do you think, in France from what you've seen, or is that really just by company, do you think, more?
I think it's hard for me to say because I don't live in a big city.
Mm.
So I always have to caveat what I say with the fact that I live in one of those sleepy little places where I do think everything happens a bit slower. I think if I lived in Paris, I would be, it would be completely different. But there is a civilized thing here in France where you take time for lunch. You do. It is important. Family time is important. Sitting around the table and eating at the table. That sort of, even for an afternoon snack, my husband will sit at the table, for a coffee and a piece of toast. He will not go and just sit in the sofa. There is a different way of doing things. I think work-life balance, it's hard as well for me to say because I work for myself, so I can balance it however I want, which is great. But my husband, he does a sort of classic, he's 8:30 to 5:30 every day, and he gets one day off every other week. So but his quite I wouldn't say he thinks it's fast paced or anything. He's okay. He enjoys it, but a big pinch of salt because where we live is probably quite different from Paris or somewhere. But I think even in big cities, they'll have their 2-hour lunches and make a point of going and doing that, and it's great.
You know what is interesting, because I worked at a company here called Stem Cell, and they employ some French employees, right? They're worldwide, so I had to do all these like contracts and stuff with different areas of the world. Now America's a little bit different to Canada, but almost same. But the thing that got me, you mentioned it in your answer there, in France, they have a day off every 2 weeks. I think it's on a Friday. And I think their hours per week is less. I think I don't know, I might be wrong here, something like 32 or 32 and a half hour weeks. And I was thinking, bloody hell, like you do that like 5-6 hours less. You have a day off every other week. I'm like, this is great. I think French culture gets that idea in terms of work, that it's just a little bit more favorable to the worker, not to the big company, especially coming from North America. I think that's quite a big difference.
I think you're right about the North American thing for sure. I think here it's you're not allowed to work more than 35 hours a week. I mean, I'm sure there's some industries where it is, like obviously you get special dispensation for certain things, but I think there is some sort of a rule where it's like a 35-hour. I think Pierre works 35 hours. It works out as that because it's not 9 to 5 because he's 8:30 to 5:30. Every day, then whatever that it's. I mean, I don't know if it is a across the board thing that people get a day off every fortnight, but for sure it isn't this thing of you work yourself into the ground. For sure, workers' rights here are very important. I don't know how long that's going to last for, but the French are great at fighting if things do look like they're going to change. They'll burn stuff to the ground. You know what I mean? So I love that about them. They're like, no. So you're not taking away our 2-hour lunches or whatever. They're amazing for that. Which I absolutely love that. I think in the UK we're quite used to saying, oh okay, yes, okay, and we're just let it pile on and pile on. We're here, they're pretty good at nipping it in the bud. But how long that'll last for, I don't know.
Okay, before we get to your podcast, a couple more questions. Just a bit of travel, really. In France, have you, obviously, nearly 10 years you've been there, or just over 10 years? Have you visited much other parts of France? And is there any areas that you love to visit with your family?
I haven't been to as many places as I would like. It's always the way. When you live somewhere, you probably visit a bit less. There's loads of places in Ireland I never visited. But and I've got 2 young children, so that has made travel a little bit more difficult. But I've just taken my eldest to Paris for the weekend. We just spent 4 days in Paris, which was absolutely fantastic. Absolutely loved that. We went to Lyon in the summer for a weekend to visit my cousin, another cousin who came to visit. I'd love to head over more to the west.
Yeah.
I've never really been over towards Bordeaux and all around there. I hear Bordeaux and Toulouse and all over there are beautiful. Lots of foodie stuff going on. I'm a big foodie, so
Hmm.
I'd love to spend more time over there. We just haven't got round to it. But we're booked as well to go camping in Normandy in
Oh,
July. And
nice.
I've been there as a kid, sort of I think a school trip or
Yeah,
when we
classic.
drove through.
Yeah.
I think we were around there. So we're going to Normandy and I can't wait for that. Avignon again, and we go as often as we can because that's where I met Pierre for the first time as well. So it's quite a
Hmm.
special place for us in that way. So we go there. Marseille, Montpellier, yeah, I've been to quite a lot of the big cities, but there's so much more for us to see. I love Grenoble as well.
Oh, okay.
That used to be a
Yeah.
place that I used to be able to fly into, before there was the option of flying into Marseille. Sometimes I would have flown into Grenoble, and it's a beautiful city.
Mm,
It's a really beautiful city.
yeah.
So yeah, we've actually, when I think about it, I've done probably more than I thought. So thanks for asking that question.
Tell you what, though, France is huge, isn't it? There's so many
I
places to
know.
see. No wonder it's the most visited place in the world. Like, there's just
Yeah.
endless options.
And going on the train to Paris was a beautiful trip
Yeah.
as well because I
Mm,
saw so much countryside on the TGV, the
hmm.
fast train. It was fantastic because I just saw so much of France in such a short space of time. It was great. It's a great way to travel.
And of course, you speaking French, that means you can dip across to like Switzerland. That'd be pretty
Mm.
easy for you, right? And Luxembourg as well. They speak French over there.
Yeah.
So,
I hadn't thought
yeah.
of that. Yeah. The next place we really want to go is Italy. I mean, we're a drive away from Italy,
Yeah, you are.
so it's
Yeah.
not far. Um, so I really, really want to go there. My sister and her family, they've just driven down to Barcelona for a couple of days. It's really accessible when you're in Europe.
I do
It's
miss Europe.
great,
Yeah,
isn't it?
I must admit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I do wonder if are you interested in visiting Canada to the French part? I do wonder how you would see that. Yeah.
Yeah,
What your thoughts would be.
years ago, with my ex, funnily enough, who's also French, there's a theme here. But we talked about moving to Canada and moving to the French speaking part.
Oh yeah.
And we were at one point thinking of, going for a big trip, to go and
Mm,
visit my family who lived in Boston or who still live in Boston at the time. So yeah, I mean, it interested me then. I would love to go and visit it now, but it's less of a priority. We've so many places we want to go. I mean,
sure.
Pierre's family, they're from Sardinia, originally, his grandparents, so we want to visit there.
Hmm.
I have so many places to visit, but I think, yeah, French speaking Canada is somewhere on the list for sure. I would love to experience that, especially with my family. I'd love to take the kids there, and
That'd be
I think it
amazing.
would be really interesting for them to hear the French that's spoken there because it's so different, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
so
apparently.
different.
It's hard for me to
Yeah.
tell, but yeah, apparently it's like someone called it like a bastardized French.
Mm.
So it's much more simpler apparently. But again, I'm not an expert, so I wouldn't know. But
I think it's simpler and also the accent is so different. We had French Canadians stay with us for a weekend once. That was one of the things I did when I moved here. We did Airbnb, so we rented out
oh
one of
yeah.
those rooms in the
Mm.
place where we stayed, and we had people coming from all over, and we had a French Canadian couple stay, and I couldn't understand a word they said.
Really? That's so
Yeah, the
interesting.
accent was so different, but I loved them. They were such lovely people. They loved being in France. They were really into hiking and everything, so they were out around here. We're quite hilly where I live. It's the
Yeah.
pre-Alps. Here, so it's starting to get really hilly and mountainous. So they just spent their time going out walking all the time. Yeah, but it was really difficult for me to understand their French.
What is the comparison for English speakers, like in your view? Like, what is it like from go back to Northern Ireland days? If you had to hear another English speaker, what would be the difference in accent? Would it be like someone English or someone American or?
Oh God, no, no, that's easy to I'd say a
Oh wow.
Glaswegian, maybe,
Ah right.
maybe,
Okay.
or
Yeah, they
somebody
can
from
be.
Cork. Like even somebody from Cork, I find hard to understand
Okay.
sometimes.
Right. Glaswegian can be hard.
And Glaswegian can be hard. I mean,
Yeah.
I absolutely love the Glasgow accent, but if you're not used to it,
Yeah.
it's quite difficult. I'm not saying that in any sort of a judgmental way.
Oh
I
no. No.
love the Cork accent. I love the Glasgow accent. But yeah, for an untrained ear, it can be I mean, I'm sure even my accent's probably quite hard for some people to understand. So yeah, I would say it's a big, big difference. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm interested with your accent because I can understand it clearly. It's not a problem, but I do have a lot of listeners like worldwide, and I wonder if they can hear you that well.
Can you do
Yeah,
subtitles on a podcast?
yeah. Do some
Sorry,
translations.
everybody.
Yeah, map it on YouTube. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, we're going to go to your podcast because my
Yeah.
best friend in France podcast is all about your experiences and life in France, especially as an English speaker living in France. So tell listeners, why did you start the podcast, and what do you try to tell listeners every week or every time you release an episode?
Mm. Yeah, so I wanted to start this podcast because I felt there was a gap. So there's loads of stuff online about moving to France in terms of the admin side of it,
Mm,
taxes and healthcare and your driving license and all this sort of boring stuff, essential but very boring stuff.
mm,
And there was never somewhere I felt online that was, that dealt with sort of the social and emotional side of moving to a different country or moving to France anyway. And I felt like I didn't have anywhere to turn when I first came here. Obviously, I had my family and I had some friends, so I could speak to them. But I really did feel, even with that, still a little bit alone. And I would have loved to have had an online space to talk to other
mhm,
people and who were in the same boat. Um, and I still felt that recently, up to a couple of years ago. I thought, goodness, there's nowhere really, there's nowhere
mhm.
really. There's all these big groups, but they're massive. And anyway, so I decided I would create a Facebook group. It's called My Best Friend in France.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because yeah, these people were joining, and I just wanted to give them a space to say, look, it's not about the admin side of things. I'm rubbish with all that. Don't ask me anything about that, but ask me about life here, ask me about culture difference, ask me about, how to integrate, how I did it anyway. Any questions you might have about life in France. I wanted it to be for people who were thinking of moving as well, who weren't necessarily already here. And then the podcast idea came about off the back of that. I thought I'd really love to talk about, how I did things. I'd love to talk about, top tips, give people an idea of what they can expect or what might help them. And then I wanted to get guests on as well to
Mhm.
talk about their experiences about life in France. So it's usually an episode every fortnight. I'm not as disciplined as I would like to be, so sometimes there isn't one, but it's usually every fortnight on a Tuesday. And there's a good back catalogue now. If you're interested, you can listen back. Most of them are pretty evergreen, so the same tips will apply today as when I recorded it a year ago. There's not it's all been since, post COVID. Yeah. So do you ever find that when you listen to stuff that was recorded pre-COVID? Do you ever listen to podcasts that
Yeah,
were recorded before COVID and think, oh, that just sounds weird? It's like a whole different time. They're saying things that just don't make sense now. And maybe pre-Brexit too.
and pre-Brexit, yeah, especially for European stuff. Yeah, it's a weird
Yeah.
one. Because we traveled last year and my mindset was still pre-COVID,
Yeah.
like in terms of budget or ease of things, but actually it's a little bit of a shock of how travel has changed. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I've only started this podcast
Yeah.
during COVID, so I think they're all evergreen, I think. But yeah,
Mm,
an interesting point. Is your
yeah.
podcast English or French or both?
It's English. I don't do any in
Okay,
French. It really is for English speakers who are
got
either
it.
thinking of making a move or who are already here. And I've made a couple of really great connections through it. So you can listen to it or you can email the podcast. It's my best friend in France at gmail.com. If you want to
Mhm.
ask me a question about life in France or moving, happy to answer it. Just don't ask me about taxes or any of that. I won't have a clue,
Lunch
but
breaks. Yeah.
he asked me about lunch breaks and, yeah, and that type of thing's fine. But I've had a couple of, just really great feedback from people, especially who have just moved.
Mm,
That seems to be the audience who appreciate the podcast the most, because it really is like they have a best friend in France. I don't want to sound so cheesy about it, but they're like, it's so great, just to hear
yeah.
someone who's been through it. And it's really informal. It's like yours, I don't want it to be anything formal
Mm.
at all. It's just me chatting. And also, yeah, giving whatever guidance or tips I can. It's all obviously from my point of view, but yeah, I think they're pretty universal for stuff, for people who are moving here. And yeah, just most people seem to really love it because it just does feel like they're chatting to their best mate. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's great. And it's so niche. I think that's why I love doing this episode right now. I can get a bit generic on my episode. Like people, yeah, I traveled to like 100 countries. Like, oh God, where do I start? But
Yeah.
I'm trying to do a bit more niche topics this year. And this is a very niche topic about someone moving to a different country, and especially English-speaking people, to another country like France, where they're not really going to help you out that much. You have to learn a language. So, yeah, I think it's going to be quite important for a lot of people who listen, I hope, who maybe are just about thinking about it, just
Yeah.
on their cusp.
I think the requirements are becoming a lot more strict as well for things like language and stuff for people who want to move.
Right.
So it is
Yeah.
something to think about when you're traveling here. And again, if you do, quite often I'll say to people, I see sometimes in these big Facebook groups, people say, oh, where's good to move to, or where should I move to, or what should, and they'll ask these questions. And usually there are just so many variables with the
Of
answer.
course. Yeah.
It's really hard to say to somebody, oh yeah, well, you should go here, here, or here. If you're thinking of moving, try and come and visit first. Come and get a sense of the place, find out if it's somewhere you think you could live.
Mm.
Obviously, if you've come in for a couple of weeks, you can't immerse yourself completely
No.
in French life, but
Yeah.
you'll get a pretty good idea. You'll have an idea of just how much you'll be able to speak English, or, ask a few people about work, get an idea, look at house prices, look at rental prices, come and see what you think if you can. Maybe that's a privileged position that I was in, that I was able to come and visit, especially for such a long time beforehand. So for sure, some people won't have that choice, but if you can come and visit, and maybe visit a few different places here in France, be a nice trip as well.
Just road trip it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we've done in. I think I told you on your podcast. Actually, I think I said that we in New Zealand, and arguably here, even though we had an idea, but especially New Zealand, we just road tripped it and thought, well, wherever we liked, we'll plot ourselves and stay there. And you could easily do that in France, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
and we get people come
wow.
here to this village. And there was a lady who parked her camper van down near the river. We lived beside a river, and this lady just appeared and was in her camper van down by the river for a few weeks. And we were thinking, who is this woman? And then everybody started to talk to her, and everybody got to know her, and we realized how lovely she was. And basically she said, oh, I've been driving around trying to find a place to stay, and now she rents an apartment here in the village.
There you
And
go.
she's lived here for a year now, and she's
great.
absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
And that seems to happen quite a lot in this little village. We have a certain je ne sais quoi, I don't know what it is about it, but I think we're pretty welcoming and kind people. So somebody like Laure, she stumbled on a good place and stayed, a bit like I did.
That's so awesome. Okay. Where can people find your podcasts, and the website maybe, or social media?
Yeah, bestfriendinfrance.com. Is the website. Just put in My Best Friend in France, wherever you get your podcasts. I do have a subscriber only podcast as well called Best Friends Talk French. So I added that one because it's with a language teacher friend of mine, and we speak French with each other on there. And there's some little learning activities with every podcast. So there's the audio plus some downloadables to help learn French. So it's £9 a month for that. You get a couple of episodes every month. And on Monday, we're doing our first Zoom chat with all the subscribers. So you can come along every quarter and join a Zoom chat with us, and we'll speak French together. So
oh, wow. There you go.
I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, but check out, it's bestfriendinfrance.com.
Awesome. Okay, Judith, thanks for coming onto the podcast. I know I've been on your podcast, so I know what you're about, but it's a pleasure to interview you on mine and get a niche topic of, we're not allowed to use the word expat. I've been told that before from you. So it's English-speaking people in France or another country can learn a lot from this, I think, just by your experiences, how you've adapted to French life, and how you're clearly so happy there. So yeah, it's been a great episode.
Yeah, thank you so much, James. I've loved it. Once again, chatting to you has been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, yeah, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5, or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcasts, and other stuff. Thank you.